Now, this is the last video of this video lecture series about the mastery system, and on this one I'm going to talk about how it all fits together and some of the other parts of the class that also fit in with this. So, mastery is what the class is all about. So basically, I will get the content that the students have to cover that year, and I'll split it up into units of knowledge. And then those units will be split into smaller topics. Now, within each topic, students will have to go through the stages for the topic in order to complete that topic. Earn enough points in the stages, and this repeats it over itself over and over again for each unit where it's closed up with the unit test, and this makes up most of the points for a class. Now, depending on the quarter, you may cover between 1 to 3 units, depending on how big the units are and how much they need to be covered. And that means 1 to 3 tests. And this will also mean between 1 and 12 topics per term, depending how long the term is and how many topics there are per unit. Every unit is usually like 1 to 3 to 4 topics. All right? Now, that's just one part of where you can get points. You can also get points for the class from something that I call project-based learning tests. Now, this is also required. In biology, for example, we have several of these. We do a long-term science fair project that we start at the beginning of the year. As soon as we finish learning about the nature of science and we cover ecology, we then start doing the project. And we move on and we do part by part, one submission every 3 weeks until we get to the end of the year and we do the whole project. So we split the science fair project into small little steps and we do them little by little, So it's long-term project-based learning. We also do the same thing with the anatomy project. Start at the very beginning of the year. We cover the anatomy units for biology content. Starting at the very beginning of the year, we do an anatomy project. And every 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we have one anatomy project submission. We also cover the groups of animals and plants and diversity of life in a similar project. Every 3 to 4 weeks, we have a different group of animal that we cover together. And so this is some examples of things that we do. We do similar long-term projects for earth-space science, and there's also some smaller short-term projects. Now, these will be required projects that will fit in with a specific timeline. And unlike mastery, they're due when they're due. So you got to do that step that date. If you fail to do it that date, you still have to do that step, but you won't get credit for it. So that's kind of how that works. And usually this will be between 25% to 30% of the grade for a given quarter. All right. So like 70% of the grade will come from mastery, and then 30% of the grade will come from project-based learning. And then there's also the collaborative classroom. Now, the collaborative classroom is part of the student's grade also, but it's usually considered extra credit. And what it is that the students can participate on the online forum, on blogs, on wikis, and by chatting online, and to get points so that they can participate and get extra credit. And then usually you can get up to 10% boost on your grade by doing this. And so it's what I call the participation grade, and you can also get participation points thrown into there as well. All right, and I have a special video lecture series that talks about this, what the collaborative classroom is, why I do it, and how it works. And make sure you watch that with us so I can know how that works on a separate video. Okay, and for each of the projects that I have, I also have one video that will teach them how to do the project. So that's kind of basically how it works. Finally, in some classes, none of this matters. As crazy as it sounds, in some cases, the class grade is completely replaced with an end-of-the-year course examination. It's called the EOC. In this case, the students are required to take end-of-the-year's examination. That determines whether they pass the class or not. Therefore, the student is ultimately responsible for learning all the material, because if they don't, when the end-of-the-year course examination comes, if they fail that test, they will have to repeat the course, So the best way to guarantee success is really to master everything, hence the mastery system. Now, in some cases, the GPA points for the class may actually come from the grade that I give. So that means the test only determines whether or not you pass the class. The grade you get comes from the actual test, the grades you got in the class. But in other cases, the test in the EOC examination might be everything. So either way, you'll be notified as a student of what that is at the beginning of the year. And if you have any questions about it, make sure you ask it. But the EOC is definitely an important component if your class is an EOC component. In AP Biology classes, the grade comes from the class, but you don't get college credit unless you pass the AP Biology class. All right? Now, to understand how the grading works for this, you have to look at my grading scale. Before I talk about that, though, understand that there's also opportunities for bonuses within the classroom. Okay, you can get up to 1% bonus to your final grade if you have extremely higher participation. You have the highest participation of all the students in the class. I might bump you up to 1%. I might also give a bonus if you never missed a single project or test. From the project-based deadlines or things like that. Also, if you never missed a single day of school, I will also give you 1% for free. And I also might give other bonuses for the best group on a group project or something like that. All right. I also give a 2% up to 2% bonus on the final grade for a student that keeps an organized model binder according to the instructions of the model binder worksheet that I have on the website. Or for a student who never goes to the bathroom during my class, all right? So have all their bathroom passes. So you can get up to 2% for that, And in my class, by the way, you don't have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. You just go, You just say, like, I want to go to the bathroom. You just go to the bathroom. You just basically leave the pass on the inbox that I have at the entrance and go to the bathroom. That's kind of how it works. But the more times you go to the bathroom, the less chance you get to get this 2% bonus at the end of the quarter. You can also get up to a 3% bonus if the student who goes to the parent portal from the gradebook system and prints every week a report that shows the student's grades and has that signed by the parents and gives that to me. If the student does it every week, you can get up to 3% bonus at the end of the quarter. So if you add all of that up together, you can get a lot of bonuses. But a student may only earn up to 5% bonus towards their final grade. And this bonus I usually only give to them if they've already exhausted everything they can possibly have done to do well. In other words, I'm giving them these bonuses not because they don't deserve it. It's like, you did everything you could to do well in the class, but you came up short no matter how hard you tried. And I could see that. Then I activate the bonuses. Otherwise, you get no bonuses. A student who did not show continuous effort throughout the quarter is not eligible for this. It loses the chance of doing this. All right? And in a special video where I talk about how I have discipline in the class, I talk about how you can lose this opportunity and how this is one of the ways that I punish students for lack of discipline. All right, so let's look at the grade scale that I use and how this actually ends up being factored into the final grade. Okay, so the grade scale is that on each term, like I talked about before, a student must earn a certain number of points based on the master system. Now, this can be earned by the master system, the project-based learning, the collaborative points, or sometimes other tasks. Now, the number of points necessary to earn a certain grade varies depending on the term. Some terms, there's more days, and so you're going to have more time, and so you have to do more. So it's like a video game. Every topic that you do, you earn some points. Every project that you complete, you earn some points. At the end of the quarter, depending on how many points you earn a grade. And that's kind of how it works. But remember that you cannot earn points for topics unless you're mastering them. And then usually, I won't let you go to the next topic unless you master the previous one. Although there are exceptions, you can ask to skip a topic, but that will cost you. We talked about that previously on these video lecture series. Now, the goals for each term are listed on each class's Mastery Goals document. It's available at the website. So you should look at the Mastery Goals to see how many points you need to do per quarter and how many points each topic is worth so that you can see what you need to do. All right? Now, in general, the formula is applied after that to determine your grade. Basically, it's like this. You're going to get the points that you've earned, all right, and divided by the total amount of points that you should have earned on the quarter. And that's going to give you like a decimal, all right? Now, you're going to get that decimal. We'll take the square root of that, all right? And then you're going to multiply that by 100. And that will give you your grade in the class. Now, sometimes I'll also add a curve on top of that, depending on a lot of different things. But because of the extra credits that I just mentioned, and because there's usually ample opportunity to perform well in the class, I rarely ever give that curve, for the final grade after all. Once it's decided how many topics you have to do and how many projects are a part of the grades, the term goals will stay solid, and the term curve is going to be extremely, extremely rare. Okay? Now, this actually means that grades usually translate like this. If you get 81% of the points, the curve will transform into a 90, and so you get an A. If you get between 64 and 81% of the points, the curve will turn that into something between 80 and 90, and so you're going to get a B. If you get between 49%, which is half, and 64% of the points, you're going to get between a 70 and an 80, which is a C. And if you get between 36%, which is only about a third, and half, you're going to get a D. Anything less than that, you will fail the class. All right? So that's kind of how it works for each quarter. Now notice what this curve is doing. It's helping the people at the bottom more than it's helping people at the top, because the class is challenging, it's difficult. And so I want to keep the challenge level up. I want to make sure that the students who are good students are not bored with the class. But the only way to make that happen is to make sure to challenge the upper students without destroying the bottom students, is to create a curve where the top receives less help than the bottom does. And that's kind of how it happens. But basically then, you notice that if you are in the 81%, you got 9 points. But if you were in the 64% ratio, you get a 16-point boost to an 80. And if you're in the 49% ratio, you get a 21% boost to a 70. And on the 36, you got a ginormous, boost to get all the way up to the 60. So that's basically how this works, and it allows me to challenge the higher level students without destroying the bottom end. But what that means is that in order to fail the class for any given quarter, you have to have done less than a third of what you're supposed to have done. All right? So the mastery goals, the projects, the collaborative classroom, everything thrown in, if you did like a third of it, you will probably be close to an F. Close to a D, sorry. If you did about half of it, you will pass with a C. All right? And if you get about 2/3 of it, you get a B. And if you did about 81% of it, which is a substantial amount, you're a master and you're going to get an A. So no one's expecting the student to learn absolutely everything, although some actually do more than they need to, But it's a generous curve, all right, to help the kids out. But remember that in EOC courses, when it comes to the end of the year, this grade may be overridden by the EOC grade when all said and done, so that the term grades are only predictors of the final grade that you will receive at the end of the course. All right, that's it. And I hope you now have a good idea of how the master system works and how it's used. And I have other lecture series which talk about other aspects of the class. So if you want to watch that, best of luck. Until then, I'll see you later, and don't do anything that would make your mama proud.